Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Midlife Realignment. I'm your host, Esther Blum, and I'm here to disrupt the narrative on perimenopause and menopause with humor, nutrition, hormones, and fierce self-advocacy. Together, we'll rewrite your story and the rules because there's a light at the end of the vaginal tunnel. Let's go. Today on the Midlife Realignment podcast, I am focusing on Alzheimer's. We all have somebody in our family or friend circles who has Alzheimer's or who is at risk for Alzheimer's. And there is nothing more important for me to speak about than early intervention for this. So I want to start with a number that should genuinely make you angry. 2 out of every 3 people living with Alzheimer's disease are women. This is not a slight lean. This is 2/3. That's 66% of Alzheimer's patients are women. And for a long time, the official explanation was, well, women just live longer, and that's why we see more women with Alzheimer's. But that's a very convenient way to dismiss what's really happening. And it's also mostly wrong, of course. Women's longer lifespan accounts for some of that gap, but nowhere near all of it. And something else is happening to the female brain that is not happening to the male brain. And that something has a name, and it is called menopause. So I'm going to walk you through what is actually going on and what the research says about prevention and why the window of opportunity to do something about it is so much narrower than your gynecologist probably mentioned, if she mentioned it at all, which we know statistically she did not. So buckle up. This one is important. I want you to share it with all the loved ones in your life who this is affecting. And by the end, I promise you will know more about your own brain than 95% of the medical professionals you have ever seen. So let's sit with that 2/3 number for a second, because here's what that 66% of women, of Alzheimer's patients being women, actually means. If you're a woman in your 40s or 50s listening to this right now, your lifetime risk of developing Alzheimer's is roughly 1 in 5. 1 in 5. For men, it's about 1 in 10. You are twice as likely to get this disease as the men in your life. And before anyone says, but Esther, women just live longer, that's why, I'm going to head that off again, because researchers have controlled this for age, they've controlled for life expectancy, and the gap doesn't close. And in fact, when scientists started looking at women's brains, specifically during the menopause transition, they found something the field has been missing for literally decades. The risk of Alzheimer's doesn't start at 65 or 70 when your symptoms show up. The risk starts in midlife. The damage starts in midlife. It starts when we start hot flashing, which means the prevention has to start in midlife too. And by the way, you could still have a risk of Alzheimer's even if you're not hot flashing. But when was the last time your doctor actually sat you down at 45 and said, hey, let's talk about your brain. Let's make sure, do you have a family history of Alzheimer's? Let's have a discussion about this. This doesn't really happen because the system was built to treat menopause as this big inconvenience to manage, not as a neurological event to take seriously. And today on the podcast, this is going to change because I've been doing this work for nearly 30 years. I have sat with hundreds, if not thousands of women who come to me in their late 40s and 50s feeling like they were losing their minds, forgetting words, walking into rooms, forgetting why. This happened to me too, reading the same paragraph 4 times. And, all those little things, not remembering where we put our keys. Or for me, I was swapping out one word for another. I would, say, please go get me the bunch of celery. And I'd be like, please go get me the scissors. Like, just my brain was just not registering words properly. But Every single one of us has been told it's stress, it's age, it's just life. You have too much on your mind, you're multitasking. And the reality is it's none of those things. It's our brains trying to function on dramatically less estrogen and getting absolutely no support from a system that should know better. So today we're going to change that for you, for your friends, for your daughters, nieces, who are going to walk through this in 15 or 20 years and who absolutely, just like you, deserve a roadmap. Let's talk for a minute about what menopause actually does to your brain. And we're going to do a quick science detour, but I promise to keep this very human and simple. So estrogen is not a lady hormone that just exists to make you ovulate and then graciously exit when your work is done. Estrogen is what's called a master regulator in the brain. It does an absurd amount of work up there. So let me list a few things just so you can appreciate the scale of what is happening to you during the menopause transition. Estrogen helps your brain use glucose, which is its primary fuel. So when estrogen drops, your brain's energy supply gets squeezed. And that is why brain fog feels like you're trying to run a marathon on fumes. It's not in your head. I mean, it's literally in your head, but it's not imaginary. Your neurons are short on gas. You are not firing on all cylinders. And estrogen supports the connections between brain cells. I mean, how cool is that? It helps with neuroplasticity, which is just a fancy word for how your brain learns and adapts and stays nimble. And when estrogen falls, those connections to the brain, they really start to thin out in specific regions. Estrogen is also anti-inflammatory in the brain. When it goes or declines, inflammation naturally goes up. Inflammation is one of those things we now believe contributes to the buildup of those amyloid plaques you've heard about in Alzheimer's research. Estrogen also regulates your sleep architecture. It helps with serotonin and dopamine production, which is why mood and motivation go sideways for so many women in perimenopause. And I want to interject for a second and also say, and not minimize the critical role that progesterone and testosterone also play in memory, cognition, and mood. But I'm just focusing on estrogen for this teachable segment. So estrogen supports the brain regions involved in memory, like the hippocampus, which is at the base of our brain. It even helps regulate body temperature, which is why the brain is the place hot flashes actually originate. It's not the skin. It's not the adrenals. It's the brain. Your brain is misreading your core temperature and panicking. That is a brain event. Have you all seen the clip on social media of a woman outside at a stadium and there is literally steam coming out from her head? That is her brain panicking and saying, I've got to cool the body off now. And here's the part that really floored me when I dug into the research. So researchers at Weill Cornell, who were led by the brilliant Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who wrote The Menopause Brain, they have done brain imaging on women across the menopause transition. Dr. Mosconi is actually using AI to compile research for millions of women across the globe, which we could never look at data like this before AI. It's really cool, but she is compiling all of this data now. But in the meantime, she has done, prior to this massive undertaking, she's done a ton of regular research and can literally see the changes in the brain. Estrogen receptor density goes up in key brain regions as women move through perimenopause. Like the brain is reaching for a signal that's no longer coming through. And they've shown that women at risk for Alzheimer's develop amyloid plaques, which is the hallmark of the disease, during perimenopause, not at 70, during perimenopause. So your 40s, your early 50s, this is when it begins. That implication is enormous. Even as I'm saying this, I'm totally getting goosebumps because Alzheimer's for women is a midlife disease that becomes visible only decades later. The damage is being done while you're still picking your kid up from soccer practice and you're wondering why you keep losing your phone. There's also a piece of this research that I find weirdly comforting, which is that Dr. Mosconi's imaging work has shown that the brain goes through what they call a U-shaped pattern during the transition. And I have noticed this in myself now being in menopause. Things get harder in the middle, right? At the beginning of this U-shaped pattern, we still fully have our cognition, memory, mood, sleep. Then once the symptoms start coming and our hormones decline, memory, energy, and mood take a hit. And then on the other side of menopause, the brain starts to recover. It reorganizes itself, it rewires. And for many women, cognitive function actually stabilizes or even improves postmenopause. So that's the light at the end of the vaginal tunnel that I want you to hold on to. And especially if you have supported the brain through this transition, you're going to come out great the other side. So the goal is not just to help you survive. The goal is to come out the other side with as much wiring intact as possible, which brings me to the next part and why nobody told you any of this. So pull up a chair, sister, because this is the story I tell in basically every talk I give. It's the story I told on the TEDx stage, and the short version goes like this. In 2002, a massive study called the Women's Health Initiative was halted early because researchers thought they were seeing an increased breast cancer risk in women on hormone replacement therapy. So the news exploded, doctors panicked, women panicked, prescriptions for HRT dropped by something like 70% almost overnight. I too remember telling my mother to stop taking her Premarin prescription, and an entire generation of women was steered away from hormones. Here's what they did not tell you at the time. The average age of the women in that study was 63. Many were in their 70s. They had been postmenopausal for years, sometimes more than a decade. They were not in optimal metabolic health, and they were given oral synthetic hormones from the urine of pregnant horses. They were conjugated equine estrogens, not the bioidentical transdermal options we have now. And they were given synthetic progestins, and the specific progestin used was medroxyprogesterone acetate, which we now know behaves very differently in the body than the bioidentical progesterone that is being prescribed today as Prometrium. It's FDA approved. You get it at your pharmacy. So when researchers went back and reanalyzed the data, they found that for women who started HRT close to menopause, in their late 40s and early 50s, the risk profile was completely different. Some risks were actually lower. Some were even protective. But the damage was done. As we know, right? Decades of women were deprived from hormones. The narrative was really calcified, and doctors who trained in the years after 2002 were taught to be scared shitless of hormones. And most never got the memo that the picture was more complicated or nuanced. The research was not interpreted properly. It was a really terrible subject research population. And so an entire generation of women hit menopause and were told to white knuckle through it, given an SSRI or birth control pills, drink some wine, try to sleep, maybe meditate. This will pass. This is menopause. This is what it is. And meanwhile, the brain damage has been accumulating. I am not anti-doctor. I am not anti-pharma, but I am pro-information. I am pro-updating medical school curriculums, not only for current medical students, but also updating currently practicing providers for their standards of care. And the information your doctor I know still has 20 plus years after that study, is still based on a misread of the data that has since been corrected. The position papers on it have been updated since 2018. Black box warning labels have been removed off all estrogen products last fall of 2025. So this is all on the system. This is not on you, and it's not on the well-meaning physician who's simply not taught any better. And also, quick aside, because I want to say this really clearly, less than 20% of GYN residency programs in the United States include formal menopause training. To this day, the doctors who are supposed to be your guide through this transition received almost zero formal education on what's happening to your body. So they're not the villains. They are downstream of a broken curriculum. But you, my sister, the patient, are paying the price. And I know this because my Instagram feed explodes when I talk about this. And I see all of you who are knowing more than your provider, who are constantly gaslit and dismissed and are swimming upstream. You, my sister, the patient, are the ones who are really struggling right now. And I see you. And this is the systemic problem I have been working to address from every angle I have access to. And this is why I'm advocating down in DC. It is too important to leave alone, and we have a lot of work to do. Let's talk about the part, though, for the purpose of this conversation that matters the most, the headline of today's episode, the thing I want you to walk away with, even if you remember nothing else. There is what research call a critical window for hormone replacement therapy and brain health, and it is narrow. A meta-analysis of more than 50 studies found that women who started HRT within 5 years of menopause reduced their risk of developing Alzheimer's by 20 to 32%. That is not insignificant at all. A 20 to 32% reduction in the risk of the disease that disproportionately destroys women. Estrogen-only therapy in midlife was associated with a 32% lower dementia risk. And when women took hormones for more than 10 years and began in midlife, the protective effect held strong. So women often ask me, when do I go off hormones? My answer is never. They should be pried out of your cold, dead hands. And also, it's never too late to start hormones. Never. Women in their 70s and 80s can start hormones. However, if you're really looking for the best window, the most optimal time to do it, the research supports starting within 5 years of menopause. I say start early if you can, the last 2 years of your perimenopause, which it can be hard to predict, I understand, but early intervention is key. And here's the brutal flip side. Women who did start HRT after age 65 or more than 10 years after menopause did not get the same benefit. And in some cases, dementia risk actually went up, especially with certain types of synthetic progestins. Again, this is why bioidentical hormones matter so much. So what does this mean for you? Quite simply, in plain English, the window matters. The timing matters more than almost any other variable. If you start in your late 40s or early 50s, or I have plenty of you listening who are going to go into perimenopause earlier than that, or menopause earlier than that. But I'm just aggregating the averages here. So if you start in your late 40s or early 50s, when your brain still has healthy estrogen receptors ready to receive the signal, you can be protective. And if you wait until you're 70 and your brain has already changed, hormones can no longer rescue what's been lost. The biological reason for this is both elegant and it's brutal. Estrogen acts on healthy neurons. And when the neurons are intact, estrogen supports them. When the neurons are already compromised by amyloid accumulation or inflammation or oxidative damage, estrogen can actually make things worse. This is why there's so much conflicting data out there. The timing of the intervention has to match the state of the tissue. Early with a healthy brain equals protective. Late with an already damaged brain equals counterproductive or harmful. This is why I get on stages and yell about this, because women in their 40s and 50s are being told, oh, you're not in menopause yet. Come back when it's bad. Come back after 10 years. Come back after 5 years. Or you don't need hormones. Just push through. And every month they wait, that window really narrows. 5 years from the date of your last period. That is the prime window, if not earlier. After that, the math gets much harder. So what does this look like in real life? I want to just talk to you about my client, Diane. She came to me when she was 53. She was a senior partner at a law firm, sharp as a tack, pistol whip, sense of humor, very, very, very sharp, funny, and she had really built her career on her ability to hold really complex cases in her head. Of course, she relied on her notes, but she was like just a walking encyclopedia of her cases. And she came to me in our first session and completely broke down and burst into tears very shortly into it. And she told me she had started forgetting names. She, for the first time in her career, had to write down questions before her client calls because she was so afraid she was going to lose her train of thought mid-conversation. She walked out of a deposition the previous week. She went to her car, like she couldn't remember the case she had just deposed. She was 2 years, I'm thinking on this, she was about 2 years past her last period, and her gynecologist told her, and I quote, brain fog is normal, try a sleep app. I mean, the gaslighting just doesn't stop here. So, of course, we ran labs on her. We ran her Dutch, her full hormone panel via blood work. And no surprise there, her estrogen was predictably rock bottom. Her progesterone was non-existent. Her testosterone, which never gets tested in women consistently, was also totally tanked. So I partnered her with a menopause-trained physician who put her on transdermal estradiol, bioidentical progesterone, a small dose of testosterone. We optimized her blood sugar and cortisol with diet, with supplements. We rebuilt her sleep. Once her energy came back, we got her lifting heavy. She wasn't lifting, she was doing light exercise, but nothing truly strenuous. So she hired a trainer. We got her lifting. We dialed in her protein, her omega-3s, and she started to feel better in a short period of time. But 6 months from the day we started working together, she sent me a message and said that I'm going to remember the rest of my career. And she said, and this gives me chills, I gave a closing argument this morning and I felt like myself for the first time in 3 years. And I was like, this is what it is. This is what it's about. This is the work. This is why I'm ranting at you about brain windows. Because Diane was only 2 years out, right? So she made that window. If she had waited another couple years, the data suggests the intervention might not have worked in the same way. And I think about all the women who don't make the window because nobody told them it existed. Hey, gorgeous. To preserve muscle in midlife, you need at least 100 to 120 grams of protein every single day. Most women I see in my practice are getting half of that, and they have no idea. They're skipping breakfast, picking at salads, or calling a yogurt lunch. And then they wonder why they're losing muscle, gaining belly fat, and feel exhausted by mid-afternoon. It's not your discipline, it's actually your protein. So I made you a free guide that fixes the foundation, starting with breakfast. Grab the 30-gram midlife breakfast cheat sheet free at estherblum.com/protein. That's estherblum.com/protein. protein. Go feed yourself, gorgeous. And now, back to the show. Okay, I know what some of you are doing right now. You're doing the math in your head. You're 71, you're 68, you're 15 years post-menopause, and you never went on hormones, and you're panicking. So take a breath. Listen to me. The window for hormones being neuroprotective is narrower. That is true. But the window for protecting your brain through every other lever is wide open at any age. The Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention has identified 14 modifiable risk factors that, when addressed, could prevent or delay nearly half of all dementia cases. 14. And almost every one of them is available to you regardless of your hormone status. So I'm going to list them so that you have something concrete to do tomorrow. You can make a list of this. This will be in the show notes. First thing, and this is something that we don't think about ever, is hearing loss. If we're not treating hearing loss, that is one of the largest modifiable risk factors for dementia. If you're straining to hear, which I hear a lot of friends complaining about this, get tested. Get hearing aids if you need them. Your brain is working harder when it cannot hear, and that cognitive load takes a huge toll. Exercise, physical activity, specifically combining aerobic exercise and resistance training together has a very favorable impact, because resistance training in particular has been shown to improve cognition in older women. Muscle is brain insurance. Muscle drives insulin into cells, so you're not getting Alzheimer's, which is type 3 diabetes. Very few people, if any, are making the link between chronically high insulin and actually damaging your brain tissue. So exercise is just an absolutely incredible insurance policy when you partner with a protein-rich, fiber-rich diet. Blood pressure. Again, you want to keep your blood pressure managed. Hypertension is a major contributor to vascular dementia. So many women I see develop hypertension in perimenopause as their hormones decline, and that blood pressure normalizes when they get on a solid cocktail of HRT, and again, adjust their diet, lifestyle factors, all those things. Sleep, something that is so near and dear to my heart and so important, especially deep sleep. Listen to this term, glymphatic system, that's your brain's cleaning crew, only works at full capacity during deep, slow wave sleep. Protect your sleep like your life depends on it, because it does. Now, here's something really cool that I love as an extrovert is social engagement. If you're lonely, if you're socially isolated, those are really huge risk factors. Stay connected, show up to the dinners, call the friend, join groups. I think exercise groups to me are just the best way to meet people. I will tell you, I was on a running team in New York City that I aptly named the Reservoir Dogs because we ran around the reservoir at Central Park. And there are at least 4 couples that came out of that group and are married to each other still today and have been married for 20 years by now. So stay socially connected. It's really, really, really important. And also cognitively engaged. Learn new things, read things, listen to lectures, go to live talks again, play games, do puzzles, take up the piano. The brain needs to be used. I look at my amazing mother-in-law who at 91 is doing the crossword puzzles, the Sudokus, the word searches. Every day she does brain exercises and she is sharp as a tack. I like to joke she's too sharp because she knows everything going on. And then, of course, there's diets. We know that Mediterranean diets have incredibly strong evidence for cognitive protection. Lots of leafy greens, berries, nuts, olive oil, fish. Everyone agrees on that. Alcohol. You knew I was going to say it. You knew I was going to say it. Bring it down. The new guidance is much more conservative than it used to be, and alcohol has measurable effects on the brain. My college son is always asking me, like, Mom, are you sure alcohol kills brain cells? I'm like, I'm absolutely sure of it. So, and we laugh, but really dial down the alcohol because it's also going to screw with your REM sleep, and that will also be worse for your cognition. Smoking. All I'm going to say is quit now. End of discussion. Depression also is a big risk factor for Alzheimer's. Untreated depression is huge, and social isolation feeds into that. It's absolutely huge. As much as you can, clean your air in your home, reduce your exposure to air pollution. There is a wonderful filter that I use at home called an air doctor. It is magic at cleaning mold, at cleaning allergens, toxins. It's incredible. Traumatic brain injury. So many of us have concussions, car accidents, sporting injuries. Protect your head, wear the helmet on the bike, get the concussion taken seriously. There is an absolutely increased risk of dementia and depression if you haven't treated it. So make sure you treat it with hyperbaric. There's hyperbaric therapies. There's Dr. Daniel Amen has clinics all over the country that do a beautiful job treating traumatic brain injuries. So if you are past the hormone window, you have not lost the game. You have other levers to pull that I've just mentioned. And the evidence is genuinely strong and compelling that it works. And also, this is important. Even if hormones are not the right call for you now, there is some emerging research on whether bioidentical hormones, when started later in carefully selected patients, may still have a role. And for me, I know that that's true because even if you're just treating the genitourinary symptoms of menopause, hormones, vaginal estrogen, systemic estrogen can be transformative. But obviously, this is a conversation to have with a menopause-trained, hormone-literate provider, not me on a podcast, not a Facebook group, not your friend who read something on Instagram. You want to work with a clinician who is going to look at your full picture, assess your risk, and you have agency at every age. This is the message. So let me answer the questions I know many of you have right now. This is going to be my rapid fire edition. What about breast cancer risk? Isn't HRT going to give me cancer? This is something I hear at every single talk I give. It's something I get asked every single day on Instagram. This is the boogeyman that has haunted hormone therapy for 2 decades. And here is my honest answer. The absolute risk increase with bioidentical estrogen plus bioidentical progesterone started in the critical window is small. And for context, drinking more than 1 alcoholic beverage a day raises breast cancer risk roughly the same amount because it's a class 1 carcinogen. And here we are, no one gives a rat's ass that women are drinking every day, but they are thinking hormones are causing cancer. So just put that in perspective. Being overweight also raises it more. Not exercising raises it more. Nobody's panicking about Chardonnay, but the risk is real, and it's really a lot smaller than the cultural narrative suggests, and it has to be weighed against the risks of doing nothing, which includes, cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, and cognitive decline. So talk to a qualified provider about your risk profile. Now, what about getting tested for the ApoE4 gene? ApoE4 is a gene variant that increases your risk of developing Alzheimer's, and about 25% of the population carries a copy of this gene. 2 to 3% carries 2 copies. 2 copies meaningfully raises risk. And here's the interesting piece is that the newer research is suggesting that ApoE4 carriers may actually derive more benefit from properly timed HRT than non-carriers because they have much more to gain from the neuroprotective effects of estrogen during the critical window. Therefore, knowing your status can actually inform your decision. You can get tested through 23andMe, through some functional medicine clinics, and increasingly actually through standard medical channels and insurance. So this knowledge is incredibly powerful for you. Another question I get asked, bioidentical progesterone versus synthetic progestins. What's the difference and why should I care? You should care because they behave completely differently in the brain. Synthetic progestins like the medroxyprogesterone used in the Women's Health Study or in birth control pills, those have been associated with some very negative cognitive effects. Bioidentical progesterone, which is structurally identical to what your ovaries used to make, that appears to be neutral or potentially beneficial. And oral micronized progesterone, when taken at night, this we know it's going to help you sleep because it has a sedating effect. And that is very protective of the brain. Sleep is magic for the brain. So the type of progesterone absolutely matters a lot. And if you are on combined HRT and you're not sure what type you're taking, ask your provider. But usually if you're getting 100 or 200 milligrams of oral progesterone prescribed through a pharmacy, that is oral micronized progesterone, aka Prometrium. Another question I get is, what about testosterone? Don't tell me women need it. I'm going to start growing hair out my chin and I'm going to lose the hair on my head. Let me tell you how badly women need testosterone. Your ovaries make it. It's the primary hormone in your body prior to menopause. I did a whole long episode on testosterone, and you should go back and listen to it if you haven't already. And after the age of 30, your ovaries make a lot less of it. It starts declining then. And it's super important for cognitive function, mood, executive function, motivation, muscle maintenance, libido, and bone health. Even no provider is ever going to tell you testosterone is key for bone health, and it is magic for bone health. And of course, in the United States, there's no FDA testosterone product for women, which is its own ridiculous story, but a good qualified provider will prescribe it at a compounding pharmacy off-label. Or you can get, if you want to get FDA-approved testosterone, ask for the men's formulation and it's a gel, and you can put about a pea-sized amount behind your knees, on the inside of your elbows, inner thighs, or lower abdomen. And if your energy and your motivation feel totally flatlined, even though you're on estrogen and progesterone, your testosterone level is worth a conversation. For me, I find I'm so appreciative and grateful of how my brain fires on all cylinders with testosterone. I'm just so grateful when I can recall everything I need to recall, when I get through the day firing on all cylinders, treating my clients, having important conversations. It's a really important hormone. Don't dismiss it, please. Another question I get asked is, what about the women who get put on antidepressants for hot flashes? And this is the one that lights me up. SSRIs are increasingly being prescribed for vasomotor symptoms in women whose doctors are afraid to prescribe hormones. Antidepressants, birth control pills, and wine, right? That's the prescription pad of misogyny. And they do help with hot flashes, sometimes in a percentage of women, but they do nothing for the underlying neurological events that are menopause. I've mentioned this in a previous podcast, but 92% of women prescribed HRT resolved their suicidal ideations within 4 weeks. This was a study done with Dr. Louise Newson over in the UK. If you want to Google it, it's there. So SSRIs are not doing anything for your cognition. They may save you from suicide, but so will HRT. SSRIs do nothing for bone density. They do not support your pelvic floor. They do nothing for cardiovascular risk. And they come with their own side effect profile, including in some cases more cognitive blunting. So if a doctor reaches for an SSRI without fully even exploring whether hormone therapy is appropriate for you, you have my permission to seek a second opinion. I always say menopause is not an antidepressant deficiency. And in fact, many women in my practice come off antidepressants after starting hormone replacement therapy because they realize they don't need it anymore. All right, another question. I'm in perimenopause, not menopause. Does any of this apply to me yet? Absolutely, and a lot more now than it will later. Perimenopause, that is when the hormonal chaos starts, the neuroendocrine storm starts. That's when the brain is being battered by these fluctuating estrogen levels. And when many of those structural changes Dr. Mosconi's lab has imaged that actually begin. Do not wait until your periods have stopped for 12 months to start the conversation. Start now. The second half of your cycle is radically different than the first. The minute your cycles start spreading out or coming closer together, you're having crime scene periods, you're having insomnia, irritability, depression, weight gain. Start adding in progesterone, testosterone if needed, and then estrogen when you need it. All right, this is a question I get asked a lot, and I see this being sold on social media all the time. Can I just eat my way out of this? Can I diet my way out of this? Can I do a cleanse? Can I do yoga? Let me tell you something. I love food more than most humans. I have built a career partially on the power of nutrition and pleasure while you're eating. And I can tell you with the deepest certainty that food alone cannot replace hormones. Food can support the brain. Protein and omega-3s and antioxidant-rich produce and stable blood sugar are absolutely brain protective, but they cannot regrow your estrogen receptors. I'm a dietitian, not a magician, people. They cannot put estrogen back in the receptors. If you are in this critical window and hormones are appropriate for you, food is the support. It's not the substitute. So now you have the science. Now what? What do you do? First, and I cannot say this enough, this is not a sales pitch for HRT for every woman on the planet. HRT is not appropriate for everyone, and not every woman wants HRT. So the decision should be made with a clinician who actually understands menopause and understands you as a whole person. Step one is finding a provider who knows what they're doing. You can call your compounding pharmacy for a referral to a hormone literate provider. You can ask in private communities online or with friends for recommendations in your area. You can come to me as a private client and I will refer you into my provider network. Second, run real labs, not those basic panel labs that your primary care orders and is going to tell you is all normal, even though they're not optimal. We need a real workup. And here's what I want on the table for any midlife woman taking her brain seriously. First, a full hormone panel, including estradiol, progesterone, free and total testosterone, DHEA sulfate, and SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin. Next, I want you to get a comprehensive thyroid panel, including TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and antibodies. Fasting insulin and hemoglobin A1C, as well as fasting glucose, and a full lipid panel, including ApoB, which is far more predictive of cardiovascular risk than the standard cholesterol numbers. I also love inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein and homocysteine. I love vitamin D, B12, ferritin, and magnesium. And if you want to know your genetic risk, get an ApoE4 genotype. That's the starting point. In my private coaching, Elite Make Menopause Your Bitch, 1-to-1 program, I also run the Dutch Complete for advanced hormone metabolism. Make sure your detox pathways are supportive, and a GI map for gut and microbiome health, because your gut health and your brain health are deeply linked through the gut-brain axis. And this picture is bigger than any one lab. And third, build the daily infrastructure that supports your brain. We know sleep is non-negotiable. We know that getting morning sunlight really sets your circadian rhythm. Limiting alcohol, which is going to fragment your deep sleep. Keeping your bedroom cold with the windows open. You can consider tracking your sleep with a wearable device like Aura or the Whoop, so you can see what's happening, not just what you think is happening. Of course, we know building muscles non-negotiable. Strength training 2 to 3 days a week. The pink dumbbells are not enough long-term. I love you. And I've done them myself when I was too exhausted to lift, but let's get your sleep restored so you can start increasing your load and just really make sure you optimized your muscle. We know protein is non-negotiable. Your brain is running on amino acids. We know blood sugar is non-negotiable, so stabilize it. We know protein and fiber at every meal is really important. Walking after meals is important. If you have no idea the impact that food is having on your insulin and glucose, consider a continuous glucose monitor, because that's going to give you real-time data. You'll be shocked at your blood sugar. Obviously, I'm going to mention controlling your stress is really important, plugging into social networks, showing up, being present in your own life. Meditating, journaling, walking, having sex, all of those are incredible. Orgasms are so incredible for the brain. Do not underestimate that as well. Make sure, lastly, that you're advocating for yourself in medical settings. Share this episode with your provider. Share it with your sisters, your friends, your daughters, your nieces. Bring the research, bring questions. Do not let a dismissive comment in a 6-minute appointment determine the next 40 years of your cognitive health. You are allowed to seek a second opinion. You are allowed to fire a provider who doesn't take you seriously. You are allowed to ask for a referral to someone with more menopause training. You are allowed to want more for yourself than what this broken system is offering. And in fact, I'm going to insist on it. And I want to close with this because I think it's actually the most important thing I'm going to say today. We have spent decades treating menopause like this annoying personal weather event, these hot flashes and mood swings and weight gain, classic midlife. We have not treated it like what it actually is, which is a major neurological inflection point that determines the trajectory of a woman's brain for the rest of her life. Menopause, it's not the end of something. It's the beginning of the second half of your brain story. And the choices that you make in your 40s and 50s, the providers that you choose, the labs you run, the hormones you do or do not take, the sleep you protect, the muscle you build, the questions you ask, all of that compounds into either a more vibrant late life brain or a more vulnerable one. You get to decide which. And listen, I want to be honest with you. There's no guarantee here. Like, some women are going to do everything right and still develop dementia. Genetics are real. Bad luck is real. We can't control every outcome, but we control a stunning amount of the variance. Genetics are the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. The research is increasingly clear that nearly half of dementia cases could be prevented or delayed through the modifiable factors. Half. That is not a rounding error. That is millions of women, including possibly you, getting more years of being themselves. And my goal is to empty out nursing homes from women in diapers with dementia, getting UTIs and dying of urosepsis. This system, though, the current system, is not built to give you this information. Most of your doctors, as we know, are not trained to give you this information. And the cultural conversation around menopause is just now in 2026, finally starting to catch up to where the science has been for years. You are the alchemist. You are informed. You're exactly the kind of woman who can break this cycle for yourself and for every woman who comes to you. So I am asking you to share this. Send it to your sister, your best friend, your mother, your daughter, your colleague, the woman at the next desk who looks like she's holding it together but is privately Googling, I'm losing my mind at midnight, because the women in your life deserve to know that this window is real and it's narrow and it's open right now. If you want to do this work one-on-one with comprehensive labs, hormone education, and a real plan built around your body, my elite program is accepting a select amount of applicants. The link is in the show notes. You can go to estherblum.com and click on my coaching link and apply to work together. We dig into all of this and more, including Dutch testing, the GI map, the blood work your doctor isn't running, and directly working with me. It's the program that I built for myself, that I would want for myself because that did not exist. And it's the program I built because I was so tired and enraged at women falling through the cracks of a broken system and living in a gaslit zone. My practice is a gaslight-free zone. We listen to you, take your concerns very seriously, and help you make this the best chapter of your life. If you found this episode valuable, the single most useful thing you can do is share it. Bonus if you leave a review so other women can find it. Tag me at Gorgeous Esther on Instagram with your takeaways. Leave a review wherever you listen. Send it to one woman in your life who needs to hear it. I love you. I'm rooting for you, and I'll see you next week. If you loved this episode, follow or subscribe to the Midlife Realignment wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, and leave a review to help other women find this show.